Heatwave.
That's what you need reminding of, isn't it? That we're in a heat wave. I just turned the heating on, so don't worry. Heat wave, in case you didn't know, we are in the middle of a heat wave. You might have come in just from America recently and think it's cold, but we are in the middle of a heat wave. Today it's supposed to get to 32 Celsius. I don't know what that is in old money or American talk in the Fahrenheit, but it's hot, is what it is. And then on Tuesday, Monday it's going to be even hotter, but Tuesday I think it's going to hit 40 degrees, apparently, which is, I think it's 104, is that right? Is that right? Oh, God, that's good maths. It's got genius in the front row like this. So 104 Fahrenheit, 40 degrees Celsius. Just to put that in perspective, in here right now, I just checked, it's 24.5 degrees. All right? So perfect. 24.5 degrees. It's ridiculous. So it will be very, very, very hot. We're in the middle of a heat wave. And what Tony and I done, and you can thank us, because it is actually not too bad in here compared to what it could be, because we actually insulated these windows just this week to make sure that we could block out as much heat as possible, because that is where the heat usually comes in to the building. You can feel them, they're like radiators usually. And so we've insulated them because we love you so much. Nothing to do, we don't want to hear you moan about it, but because we love you so much and don't want you to overheat, we insulated them. And so, quick survey before I get into the message about particularly this heat wave. Who's been loving the heat so far? Who's a heat? Oh, we've got a few. All the people who've come from Australia, South Africa, New Zealand, yeah, all them people, hot states in America. Everyone else didn't put their hand up. So who's been not liking the heat at all, and it's just, oh, miserable, and you're miserable, yeah. Yeah, just a few of you. Because really, with a heat wave, the way I see it, and this will be controversial, and you know, I'm not even talking theological stuff yet that's controversial. This will just be controversial because some of you will disagree. There's two ways to deal with a heat wave. And some of you deal with it one way, others of you deal with it another way. The one way to deal with it is to avoid the heat. Stay inside, live in the fridge, aircon on, hats on, sun cream, all the things you can do to try and avoid the heat. That's one way to deal with the heat wave. If usually English people, the sun comes out, it's not we flock outside because we only see it 3 days a year. But for a lot of people, they avoid the heat. The other way to deal with a heat wave is to actually embrace the heat. You know it's coming. So what you did, Steph done it yesterday. She went to Tesco's. Flipping great deal. Got this massive paddling pool for £21, and it's only 8 foot wide, but it's like this deep, so I can sit in it. And so you can embrace the heat by dressing a certain way, being in your Speedos, by the pool in the garden. Even if you haven't got any money, you can have a little tub with your feet in it, with a cold drink, and embrace it, soak it up as much as possible, do as little activity, and embrace the heat, and love it, and enjoy it, and some of you do that. So you can run from the sun, or you can have fun in the sun. There's two approaches to it. You can run from it, or you can have fun in it. And I think hot is great if you're laying by a pool with a cold drink and nothing to do, have a nice cool dip off. But on Friday, it was quite warm, and I had to go to another wedding. If you're new to church, I was moaning about having a wedding in here the weeks before because I hate wearing a suit, I hate being hot. And on Friday, it was really hot, and so I had another wedding, a family wedding. It was lovely, but I was boiling. I think I got a bit of heat stroke as well. And it wasn't very nice at all. It did not feel nice. And the thing is, it's the prolonged exposure, isn't it, that we don't like, when it's longer than it's comfortable. Because most of us actually like a bit of sun, like the heat, but it's when it's longer than is comfortable. When we start getting uncomfortable, that's when we tap out and we're like, this isn't nice anymore. I don't like this. I don't want to play. I don't want to embrace it anymore. Now I want to avoid it. And I remember probably the time that I had the worst experience with heat. Years ago, we went on a Florida holiday. It was when I only had 2 kids. I've got 4 now. But we had 2 at the time, and we took our car seats on the plane. It was brilliant, because you can strap the kids in, and you can just leave them and go somewhere else in the plane, and they can't get out. And so we strapped them, we took them in the car seats, so we took our car seats to the car hire, to the hire car that had been sat out in the sun, in the Florida heat, probably 32 degrees in the direct sun. And I opened the doors to get in. It'd been a long flight. We'd been delayed about 2 hours as well. So, like, for the kids' point, well, from our point of view, it was like almost midnight, and we got a 2-year-old and like a 6-year-old or something like that. And they were just really tired, really whingy. I was tired. And we got to the hire car, and I was like, right, we just got to go as quick as possible. So I opened the doors, climbed in, started putting the seats in. And anyone who knows, like, it's hard work putting your seat in your own car, let alone a car from a different country with different shapes. And I was in like 5 minutes trying to do this, and I hadn't realised that the car, honestly, the car must have been 55, 60 degrees inside because it had been in the sunlight. It was ridiculous. I read up, actually, that the dashboards on them can get so, it's like 157 degrees or something. You can cook things on the dash. It was so hot. And I was getting, it was really bad, I was getting rather irritable and shouty. And I'd brought my mum with me on holiday as well, and she's never seen me like this. But I was like the Hulk trapped in a car, but sweating, like, ah! I just felt awful, and I got out and ended up, got it all in, aircon on, and your aircon in the US in the cars is amazing. It's like a magic button. It's like instant cold. Oh, it was lovely. And I calmed down. I apologised to my family and my mum. I was like, I'm sorry. It's ridiculous just from being in the heat for too long. And some of you are a bit like that. There's a few in the room who I know who hate the heat, who get a little bit agitated, shall we say. And so I was desperate to get out of that car. It was horrible. I was desperate to get out. And so next time we went back a few years later, what I decided to do, even though we were late and tired as well, what I done was turn the car on, put the aircon on for a minute, and then I done it. Hey, not just a hat rack. I'm learning. I'm smart. But my point is that we don't like to be hot. We don't like being too hot. We don't like being too hot, uncomfortably hot. And it's not just you, it's your brain and the back of your brain that you don't even control, that your nervous system freaks out when you're too hot. Your body goes, ah! And it starts sweating, it starts putting all the blood to the surface of your body, it makes you all lethargic, tired. You don't like being too hot. I don't like being too hot. Because why? Our body knows, we know as well, that extreme heat can be destructive. Extreme heat can be destructive. I was out doing the outside work the other day and I was wearing like a muscle vest. I told you a few weeks ago, if you were here, I got burnt. Last week I got burnt again in the same place. I'm all blistery and falling apart because I was silly. And I couldn't reach the sun cream spots again on my back. And so we know it can be destructive. Too much sun, too much heat can give you heat stroke, sunburn, makes you irritable. It can even make you die. That's the destructive power of the sun, the destructive power of heat. But today I want to say as well that, and some of you won't like this, me saying this right now, is that extreme heat can be beneficial. Extreme heat can actually be beneficial. And here I've got a lovely picture of a sauna. Look where it is, isn't that beautiful? I've never been in a sauna like that before. I've been sat across from two, big fat men with their shirts off, usually. It's not quite as beautiful as that view, but extreme heat can be beneficial. And I don't just mean in a sauna, I mean even the sun, the right amount of sun. We know the sun is important for vitamin D. It was pushed over COVID. Come on, make sure you get outside, get your vitamin D. It helps. It helps with sleep regulation. It actually reduces the risk of cancers. Not extreme exposure for skin, but everything else, doing it properly. Not overexposure, but exposure to. It can improve all sorts of things. It can improve our sight even, which you wouldn't think, because the sun is dangerous to look at. And so with saunas, whoever does saunas? Anyone do a sauna? Oh, there's a few in the house like a sauna. My sister a couple of years ago said, I'm going to buy a sauna. And I was like, that's a really dumb idea, but I love saunas. And she was going to buy one for her room, like an infrared one. So I was like, that sounds like a great idea, because then I can use it. So she bought her own sauna, because as you know, if you know me well, my sister does all the cold water swimming stuff, but she also does the sauna-y type stuff because of the benefits that it can have to you. In a sauna, voluntary exposure to extreme temperatures, and they are extreme for our body, has so many benefits to do with stress, doing lower blood pressure, improve heart health, get rid of toxins, improve skin, metabolic function, muscle recovery, all these things, even weight loss, cognitive function, memory, all of these things that have been shown to be helped by sauna. Extreme heat that we don't like, that's uncomfortable, can be beneficial for us. All of that from being too hot, uncomfortably hot. If you're in a sauna, you should be uncomfortable and for longer than you want to. If you get in a sauna and go, oh, I'm a little bit warm, and then you get out, no benefit. But if you go in a sauna to the point where you're uncomfortable, I'm not talking dangerous levels, all right? Don't sue me when you come out and collapse. But if you're uncomfortable for longer than you would like, or that you feel like you can even bear, that's when the benefit comes. And so I want to expand on my point is that, and don't worry, I'll get to the Bible in a minute, is that we don't like being too hot, but being too hot can be good for us. We don't like being too hot, and this is just, I've planned this whole message so that you'll just sit there for a little bit longer in a hot room on this heat wave. We don't like being too hot, but being too hot can be good for us. Being uncomfortable. So what I want to talk about really today with regard to heat wave, with this heat wave in terms of being hot, I want to talk about prolonged uncomfortable periods. Prolonged uncomfortable periods. And I don't know about you, I know there's a few people in the room who are going through some difficult times now, and they don't seem to end, and it's just prolonged. It's longer than required, you feel. But the Bible uses this symbolism of exposure to heat so often, over and over again, this exposure to heat or this exposure to fire to describe suffering, to describe difficulty, to describe challenge, to describe testing times. All of these things, there's a picture that Bible describes of exposure to heat and exposure to fire, with being tested, with suffering, with the difficult times in our world. And today, really, I want to expand upon a message I've done a few weeks ago, if you were here, about gratitude. And my whole point of that was being grateful for suffering. And I know that's a weird thing, and it's a difficult thing sometimes, but I want to expand even further on that. I wanted to go into it more, but I didn't. But I'm going to expand that today. And because I believe that often, just often, not all of the time perhaps, but my suffering, my enduring the heat wave, whatever that looks like in my world at the time, your trials, your testing times are actually, like the sauna, good for you. And when you're in the middle of that, you don't want to hear that. You don't, in fact, it irritates you. If you're going through something now and someone's on a stage with a mic saying, the thing you're going through that is really uncomfortable and you're suffering is good for you. If someone comes in a sauna right before you want to get out and they're like, you need to stay because it's really good for you, you want to punch them in the face. And we understand that sort of visceral, like, don't tell me things that I already know, but I don't want to accept. But the truth is, and I believe it's a truth that's beyond what we just believe to be true. It's truth to the core. It's a true thing that our suffering, even, not just challenge, not just things that are difficult, but even suffering can be good for us. And I love this bit in Isaiah 48:10. Here we go. It says this, and I love the phraseology of this. See, I have refined you. Through, though not as silver, like silver's refined, it's heated up and all the dross comes out. Not as silver. I have tested you, I love this, in the furnace of affliction. Oh, what a picture. I've tested you, I've refined you in the furnace of affliction. And none of us would enter that voluntarily. Yeah, I'll jump in, even though we jump in saunas. But this picture of being in the furnace, of being melted down, of being refined, of all the imperfections being removed is a beautiful picture to understand this point. The furnace of affliction to refine us, to test us. And yet so often, not just like in a heat wave from the sun, but so often in our life we try to avoid the heat. We try and avoid the heat. Anything that's challenging, anything that's difficult, any suffering, and it's understandable. Who wants to suffer? But so often we try and avoid the heat at any cost. But I want to say, but it's only overexposure to heat that is damaging. Not just exposure. It's overexposure to heat and to sun that's damaging, not merely exposure. In fact, the sun is good for us. And we often make the mistake, I feel, and I'm sure I've done it many a time, but we often make the mistake that if something has the potential for serious harm, we should avoid it. If something has the potential for harm, we should avoid it. And depending on your personality type, you'll be further on the spectrum of how far away you want to run from that thing. Like a hungry bear, I'm probably on the spectrum, let's play with it. Many of you would run away, many of you would lay dead. But so often we try and avoid the heat, we try and avoid the challenge, we want to avoid anything that causes us pain or suffering or turmoil. And so we think anything that has potential to harm us, we should avoid. And yet the truth is nearly everything in life has the potential to harm us. It's just how much exposure to it is good for us. So we try and avoid things that have potential to harm us, when in fact most things can harm us in the wrong amounts, but can be super beneficial in the right amounts. Like the simplest form is like water. In the right amount, is perfect for us, keeps us alive. Too much water, and we drown, effectively. And so everything in our world, but so often we try and avoid the things that are actually super beneficial for us in the right framework. And so in life, we try and avoid the heat so often. We avoid difficulty. We run from challenge. We want to escape any uncomfortable thing. Almost like we shouldn't experience that, especially as children of God. If you're a follower of Jesus, I shouldn't be going through this thing because I'm a child of the King. Oh, that rhymes. That could have been a point. I shouldn't be going through this thing because I'm a child of the King. This doesn't make sense. And often we might not articulate that, but so often that is perhaps how we feel down low when we're going through a prolonged period, just like a heat wave, a prolonged period of time where it's not letting up. When we're going through a prolonged period of suffering, whatever that might be in our world, we can think we want to run away from this and it's horrible and it's dangerous and we don't expect it to happen to us. And what we do, or what we try and do, is insulate ourselves. We try and wrap ourselves in a bubble. And we've seen it in all sorts of things over the last couple of years particularly. But we try and insulate ourselves from challenge, from suffering, from trials, from testing times. And this is just my opinion, this isn't scripture, but my opinion is that our culture wants to insulate our kids from difficulty all the time. It's moving towards that. It's like, keep them safe. And I'm not saying you shouldn't keep your kids safe. But what I'm saying is our culture's moving towards that, of keeping them so safe. Don't let them go through any difficulty. Don't let them have anything that challenges them. Don't let them experience ever negative emotion. Don't let them be disappointed. And that you can see it no better than in our middle school sports days. It's like everyone gets a medal. Even the person who refused to run, you can have a medal. And there's pros and cons to that, and I understand the reasons for it. But so often we're trying to insulate our youngsters against anything that is damaging or is hard or is challenging. Or even scary, things that they're scared of. We hide them from and shield them from, or dangerous things, we do the same. Even from the sun. The sun is good for us. And yet, as a culture, we've been hiding from the sun for so long. Don't go near it because it's so dangerous. And when you do that to the extent that we can do it, you actually get health destruction. And so we can do the same in every area of life, not just in the natural things, where we insulate ourselves and our kids from things that are actually beneficial to be exposed to. And I think if we're to grow our kids, and me and Steph talk about this a lot, to be strong, mature adults, we must expose our kids to those things. Not insulate them, not even just, some of you might not like me for this, again, this is just my opinion, but not just allow things to happen, but actually orchestrate things to bring challenge. Actually set things up so that they can experience things that are difficult and challenging and negatively, emotionally, to build a robustness towards it. And like I said, some of you weren't like this, but my daughter is pretty much terrified of everything. So my son, he's like the Tasmanian devil, like, rah, spinning around, not scared of anything. He'll hug a pit bull around the head, give it a squeeze. He's just not scared of anything that he should be. In some ways, he's scared of things that he shouldn't be, like that aren't even scary. It's weird. But there's no fear there at all. And so we have to rein him in sometimes and be like, that is dangerous. We don't run into cars to try and stop them. We wait for them to pass. He's that end of the spectrum. But my second child, Ava, is terrified of everything. Like even at night, it's like, what if a burglar breaks in? I'm like, have you met your daddy? She's like, what if there's a fire? And all of these things. And there was it was hundreds of things that are coming up. And I said to Steph, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to make her go to jiu-jitsu with Joel because she'll hate it. She'll hate it because it's combative, which she doesn't like. It's people shouting sometimes, not at them, but it's just loud. There's lots of people. It's an environment I knew that she would not like. And we took her there, and she was terrified for the first session. And then they were supposed to spar someone, just easy, gentle sparring. She's like, I don't want to do it. I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. I was like, it's fine, babe. You don't need to do it. You can sit, you can watch. Just exposing her gently to the things that she's terrified of, but I know will actually be beneficial for her in the long term. And it was great because it went 3 or 4 weeks, and she kept saying, "No, I don't want to spar. I don't mind doing the practicing, but I don't want to spar when someone might try and hurt me." I'm like, "It's cool, you don't have to." But one of the dads was helping out, who's a jiu-jitsu guy, and he just went, "Okay, next up, Ava, let's come and fight." And you saw her go, "Oh no, hold on." And she didn't have time to say no, and then within 5 seconds, she's wrestling this other little girl, throwing her on the floor, going, "Yay!" And a change in her, boom, overnight, of not being fearful of them sort of situations. I then took Joel to the World Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu tournament a few weeks ago. He'd done really well. He got a bronze medal in his age group, in his weight class, and his belt class. He'd done really well, but Ava was like, "I'm not sure I want to do it." I was like, "Okay, you don't have to. It's cool, but you're coming. You're coming to watch. I want to expose you to the thing that you're terrified of, because there's like 1,000 people in a hall." And that's what she'd be scared of, not wrestling somebody. And so Daddy decided, as a daddy who loves her, wants to grow her, you're going to be exposed to something where you're going to be uncomfortable, even though you're not in the fight. I'm going to expose you to something where you're uncomfortable, so that in the future you've grown, you've matured, you've got a skill set within you that you didn't have before to be able to deal with what you need to deal with, what life is going to throw at you. And that's a purposeful thing. That's a choice. As a dad and a mum, we're orchestrating it. We're saying we're going to make her suffer. We're going to make her go through a trial or a challenge for her good. And I think God does the same with us. Your perfect Father in heaven does the same with us. He does the same. He purposefully exposes us to challenge, and even all the way up, even to suffering, and tells us to face it. And says, you're going to face it. You need to deal with it. And have I got time? Probably not. There's a great story in the Old Testament where Moses was in the wilderness with the people, and all the people were sinning against God. And what God done, and some of you who disagree with him, you can have a word with him when you get up there. But what he done was send poisonous snakes into the camp to go and bite all the people. It's like, you're going to be naughty, right? Have some poisonous snakes. I've checked with the law. I'm not allowed to do that with my children when they're naughty. It's frowned upon, apparently. But God allowed poisonous snakes to go into the camp and start biting people. And then the people realized that it was their sin that caused this thing. And they went to Moses and said, "Ask God, ask our Father to take them away. Please, we'll be good. We'll stop sinning. Take them away." And God's gone, "Okay, you're stopping sinning, but you know what? I'm not going to take them away. What I'm going to do is every time they bite you, I want you to come and actually face and look up to this bronze snake that Moses is going to make. It's not an idol thing. That's not what it was. It was like a representation of the poisonous snake. When you get bitten, I want you to come and look at it. I want you to look at the thing you're terrified at in the eyes, and then you will live," it says. If you do that, you'll live. If you don't, then you're going to die. I want you to face the thing that you're actually asking me to remove from your life, the difficulty, the suffering. I actually want you to still go through it and actually face it. And it's a fantastic story, but it's almost like this suffering thing that so much of the world is running away from, and so many people use as an excuse even to disbelieve that there's even a God, where really it's God's idea for our good in many respects. And there's lots of pointless suffering in the world. I don't want to go down that route today, but Psalm 66 from verse 10 says this: "For you, God, tested us." This is a psalm. It's in a song form. We could have sung this morning. "For you, God, tested us. You refined us like silver. You made us more pure. You refined us like silver. Check this out. And how did he do that? You brought us into prison." What verse in a song? You refined us and tested us by making us go to jail and laid burdens on our backs. Oh, dear. Oh, it gets worse. You let people ride over our heads. We went through fire and water, but you brought us to a place of abundance. For you, God, tested us. You refined us like silver. You brought us into prison and laid burdens on our backs. You let people ride over our heads. We went through fire. We went through the heat wave. We went through that prolonged period of uncomfortableness. Yet you brought us to a place of abundance. And we, more than ever in the modern world, we want comfort. We do. Like, I want aircon in here. I do. I'm not going to lie. Some of you too. You like, shove the pod. We'll put our money into an aircon unit. It's about $8,000 though, so I've checked. But more than ever, we want comfort. We want it easy, and we want no suffering. We want no suffering across the planet. And I think when we feel that and articulate that, I think God's laughing because he's saying that's not how it works. In fact, it's required. It's like, I need you to go through the fire. I need you to get hot. I need you to get in the sauna because it's good for you and it's part of what must be done to be his people. In Zechariah 13:9, it says this. He was talking about separating the people into groups and he's just going to wipe some out, but 1/3 of them, this third of Israel, I'll put into the fire. He'll put them into the fire. I will refine them like silver. Again, that picture over and over again, and test them like gold. And check this, they will call on my name and I will answer them. I will say they are my people and they will say the Lord is our God. Check that. God's saying, I'm going to put you in the fire. I'm going to put you somewhere uncomfortable. And because of that, you're going to call me your God and you're going to be my people. You see, unlike in a heat wave, when God exposes us to heat and to difficulty, it's good for us. He's like an expert blacksmith, like this guy behind me, like an expert blacksmith. He wants to forge us. He wants to heat us up and mold us into the shape he wants, a shape designed for his purpose. And just like a blacksmith heats material and bashes it, he bashes away. Look at that. That seems aggressive. But he heats us up and he bashes us in an extreme heat, even painful blows that hurt. And he keeps putting us back in the fire, just like a blacksmith, in a purposeful and controlled way, even if it feels uncomfortable, even if it's too long, even if it feels like it's too hot for us. And just like a blacksmith, when he forges a piece of metal, what does the heat do? The heat strengthens us. That metal, when it's heated up, all the grain of it, if you like, goes in the same direction. And as they whack it, it makes it stronger. The heat strengthens us. It fortifies us. It shapes us into something useful, as purposeful, that a tool that God could use, and it purifies us too. It purifies us. The act of that sometimes, as we draw closer to God, it purifies us from all the stuff that's in us that God wants out of us. And so the heat is required. The suffering, the challenge, the difficulty is required. The heat is required to make us pure. It's required to make us useful. It's required to make us strong. And so in 1 Peter, look at that. In 1 Peter 1, 6-7, it says this, and I've read these a lot over the years, but I'm going to smash 4 of them out in a row. It says this, in all of this, greatly rejoice. That's how you go into the heat wave. Greatly rejoice, though now for a little while you may have to suffer grief in all kinds of trials. These have come so that the proven genuineness of your faith, of greater worth than gold, that picture again, which perishes even though refined by fire, may result in praise, glory, and honor when Jesus Christ is revealed. We jump down to 1 Peter 4, verse 12. Dear friends, do not be surprised at the fiery ordeal. I love that picture again of this heat and this fire. Don't be surprised at this ordeal that you're going through, this fiery ordeal that has come on you to test you as though something strange was happening to you. But rejoice in as much as you participate in the sufferings of Christ, so that you may be overjoyed when his glory is revealed. James 1, verse 2-4 says this, and we've read this a lot in our church before. Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith, love this, your testing of your faith through that suffering and them trials produces perseverance. Let perseverance finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything. If you jump down to verse 12, please, it says then, blessed is the one who perseveres under trial, who stays in the sauna, who sees the difficult, challenging thing through to the end, not run away, not avoid. It says, blessed is the one who perseveres under trial, because having stood the test, the person will receive the crown of life that the Lord has promised to those who love him. You see, Scripture's really clear. We will all face trial. We will all face suffering. We will all face testing times. We can't get away from going through the heat wave. Just like this, the next few days, you can't get away from it unless you fly to somewhere snowy. We can't get away from it. And how we respond to the suffering, I can't overstate the importance in our life of how we respond to that. Because I repeat, like at the beginning of my message, there's two ways to deal with a heat wave. You can either avoid the heat at any cost and try and run away from it, or you can embrace the heat. You can embrace the heat. Just like on Monday and Tuesday, you might have the option, if you're lucky, to avoid the heat and stay indoors and run from the sun. Or if you're really lucky, you might be able to embrace it and have a day off work and be by a pool in your garden with a cold drink in your hand, thinking, this is lovely. But so too can we choose how we react to the heat wave of testing times in our life. We can try and insulate ourselves from it. We can try and avoid it. We can moan about it and grumble and never grow or benefit from that thing. Or we can embrace it. And like Scripture says, consider it an opportunity even for joy, for growth, for refining of us. And accept that God is actually forging us into something stronger. He's forging us into something more purposeful. He's forging us into something more pure. And so, over the next few weeks, I think it might be a long one. I hope you enjoy the heat wave. I do. I really do. I hope you can enjoy the heat wave, because before you know it, winter will be here and you'll be moaning it's cold. Amen. Let's pray. Father,